Hi everybody, this is Lee, and with this video I'm discussing the Bayou Ridge pipeline as a follow-up story. I talked about it earlier as the other end of the Dakota Access Pipeline from North Dakota, and that the oil will eventually find its way down to St. James, Louisiana, a primarily impoverished African American community in Louisiana, and that the same company is constructing the Bayou Ridge pipeline. It's Energy Transfer Partners. It's 162.5 miles, stretching from Lake Charles, Louisiana to St. James. Running through one of the largest wetland areas, natural heritage location in Louisiana, and also running through what is called Cancer Alley. That these are people who have been poisoned already with environmental contaminants, and that there have been sickness and death as a result. And so now there's additional fossil fuel construction scheduled by Energy Transfer Partners, and then also two methanol plants. And so worse and worser, and then worstest, is occurring in this location. The additional information that I'm providing is the fact that apparently Tigerswan, the private security contracting firm, has actually received a permit to operate in Louisiana. And so people are contemplating that, based on past history, that they are headed to the Bayou Bridge location. And so people are giving each other the heads up that what happened in North Dakota, where Tigerswan was operating, was militarized actions against the civilian population in North Dakota and the South Dakota area, as protesters were fighting to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline. And then we can go even further back, that not Tigerswan, but we can go back to what happened in New Orleans with Katrina, where we had a private security force terrorizing a civilian population. These were people who had seen family members die, who had to make decisions on whether they could rescue their parents or rescue their children or rescue themselves. These are people who were cut off from medications, from food, and from water by the flooding, and then by the security forces themselves, who used deprivation to control the population. And so we see traumatized people who had guns pointed at them, and they were treated as criminals. They were in need of medications and treatments, they were in need of food, they were in need of water, and they were treated as criminals, and they were caged inside the Superdome. This is what we see with private security forces. Also with National Guard, who participated. And the funny thing about Katrina in New Orleans is the fact that the Louisiana National Guard had been activated to go overseas. The Louisiana National Guard was missing. And so that was their people, but they weren't there to rescue them. They were overseas conducting actions against people in the Middle East. And this was under the Bush administration. And so they had to bring in private security forces to militarize and police and criminalize the people, because it was unlikely the Louisiana National Guard would have done that. And then call in National Guards from around the nation to terrorize that population. And we saw that again in North Dakota against the Standing Rock Sioux Nation. About almost 800 arrests, certainly many injuries, certainly lots of disastrous consequences, and that the people were treated as criminals, as insurgents, as terrorists, as jihadists in North Dakota. And so what we see in the Middle East of private security firms operating, doing and conducting military actions on our behalf of the United States, because if they're a private force, they are not bound under the laws that our military, our official military are, that they can go the extra step that people feel is necessary. What we saw in the Middle East, it's here. People are trying to fade it away and say, well, that's over there and that's them and they're terrorists and they're Muslim and this and this. What's over there is over here now. Militarized equipment, drones, flashbangs, surveillance, infiltration, provocation, all that's happening here. We saw it in Ferguson as well, with, again, terrorization of a civilian population by militarized forces with military equipment. And so now Tigerswan, one of these contractors, private security forces who are not bound by military law or rules of engagement, sufficient deniability where they can do just about anything they want to do, they are now attempting to operate in Louisiana against the protesters of the Bayou Ridge pipeline. And so we see this continuing to happen. And what we see, like in places like Haiti, it's here now. What we think is over there to other people, it's actually happening here. It's getting closer. We see North Dakota, we see Missouri, we see Louisiana, and then, maybe it's Chicago next time. Maybe it's New York City or Philadelphia or Los Angeles. And so it's getting closer. And so, again, what can we expect? We can expect our mainstream media to refuse to cover the story and to pretend it's not happening. Or once it does break through to the point that people cannot ignore it, we can see them smear the victims of these private security forces. Well, they're criminals. Well, they're terrorists. Well, they're they're insurgents. They're, criminals. They're looting. Things like this. This is people who have lived, their families have lived in that community for generations. And then we have outside people coming in, terrorizing them and calling them criminals for defending their public health and their right to live unmolested. And so we've seen this pattern. And for those of you who have interest, I'm going to leave links in the description so you can learn how you can assist them down in Louisiana, at least bear witness, and ensure that what the mainstream media does not cover does get covered. Pastor Harry Joseph is one of the leaders in St. James Mount Triumph Baptist Church, that he is leading one of the legal challenges to overturn the coastal permit. I'll have contact information of certain groups who are lending their assistance down in St. James, Louisiana, against the Bayou Bridge pipeline. It seems as though some people want to be bought out so they can relocate from the Cancer Alley to a safer, cleaner environment. And then some actually want to stop the Bayou Ridge pipeline completely. One of the problems is that the industrial builders, they've actually cut off a public road out of town, closing off a safe road to travel in case of natural disaster like a tornado. And so the people are kind of trapped there if something were to happen. Let's see. I think I've covered everything. People say that it's because of jobs and because of money, but I think that story's not really holding out anymore. That if you are sickened with cancer or lung disease from breathing in fumes or other kinds of sicknesses that go with environmental pollution, there's no amount of money that can make up for your ruined health. And the jobs are usually temporary. Maybe they last 1 year. And so this is what's happening. I'm going to go ahead and leave information, and in case you are inspired to help, that you'll have an avenue to do that. Good luck.